Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. The City Council's budget work session will now come to order. Madam Clerk, if you'll provide the Chamber Emergency Evacuation Plan announcement.
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left or right front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed down 9th Street and enter the assembly area located in the former public safety building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually and hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building. And Madam President, for the record, you do have all members with the exception of Councilor Lynch. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Today, we will have a presentation of the proposed revenue and operating budget. After the presentation, we will have opportunity for any questions and then discussion of next steps. But we have Mayor Avula, who's joined us to kick this off.
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of council. You guys heard a lot from me during budget introduction, so I'm just gonna share a couple of context setting. One, I talked to a couple of you over the weekend. Thank you so much for digging into this. I know that there's a lot to get through, but really appreciate the rigor that you're bringing to the process. And it's how our democracy works, right? It is us getting into the details, working back and forth, and I look forward to how we do that over the next few weeks. Second, just a word of thanks to the incredible amount of work, particularly for our interim CAO, Sabrina Joy Hogg, and Megan Brown, our budget director. Just even seeing the list of questions that you guys had on your first pass and the enormous amount of work. Hopefully you guys all got a chance to look at some of those responses and know that there's going to be a lot more of that over the course of the next few weeks. I also wanted to address specifically the issue of the budget ordinance and how it included some things that weren't necessarily budget related. Just know that we are, however you all want to approach that, if we want to pull some of those items out, I'm more than supportive of that and fully expect that that's how we will manage this moving forward. And you know, we'll continue to work out our processes and figure out our rhythms over the next 4 years in terms of how we do this. But yeah, let the budget work begin. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mayor. And is it Ms. Joy Hogg who's going to get us started? Yes. In terms of the presentation?
Yes.
Welcome, Ms. Joy Hogg and Ms. Brown.
Oh, she's going to flip. She's going to be my Vanna. Thank you. Okay, this is a long one, but I will try to go through it quick as possible. So, good afternoon. Thank you, President, Vice President, and members of council. My name is Sabrina Joy Hogg, interim CAO. As you know, on March 27th, the mayor presented his proposed FY26 budget. While he covered the major initiatives of his budget, I am here today to give you more detail on the revenue and operating and policy background that's contained in that large book that you have. Before I begin, the mayor's budget is developed it's not just developed by one or two people. It is developed by a team of people, and most of them are in this chamber with me today. They are also my lifeline that I'm going to call should I need help answering questions, because there are a lot of numbers and a lot of pages, and my memory is not as good as it used to be. So slide 2, why are we here today? This is the presentation where we will give you the overview of revenues, the economy, and the forecast used to develop the budget. We'll go through overview of some operational changes, compensation changes, and lastly, we'll go through the policy changes. So first, we had to navigate a significant historical shift with the long-term impacts from the pandemic unfolding. We are still coming out of what happened to us almost 5 years ago, but we continue to evolve as a city. Operations and services are changing, and we are adapting. The pandemic taught us to push for innovation, efficiency, and expanded our opportunities to become a more nimble organization. As such, this year's budget is a budget built on resiliency. Throughout this budget, you will see how we have come back stronger, reflected through investments in customer service, IT, the community, and our city employees. FY 2026 represents a unique budget, as it is Mayor Avula's inaugural budget. As we go through the budget approval process, please keep in mind that the budget is a policy document, that it lays out a plan for the upcoming fiscal year. The budget reinforces the city's commitment to operational efficiency, financial stability, and the continued expansion of opportunities. While revenues have grown, the budget needs for FY 26 are higher, requiring difficult decisions to align with available resources. So let's start with a look at the revenue picture and the 5-year forecast. To build a budget, we start with the revenue side of the house and build a forecast for the upcoming financial year and the out years. But we also can take a look back. Throughout the past several years, we have talked about the rising costs of operations and providing services. We knew the upcoming years were going to be tight based on our revenue and expenditure patterns. As you can see, expenditures or our citywide needs are outpacing our revenue. Something's blocking the screen. And with the assessment freeze coming in 2027, next year will be even more difficult. So let's look ahead. Okay, we can't look ahead because the pointer is not working. There we go. All right, looking ahead. Similar to years past, the updated five-year forecast continues to indicate growing gap over the next 5 years. As such, we must adopt a strategic and intentional approach to spending to ensure the city's financial health remains strong. Focus on maintaining critical services while carefully evaluating discretionary spending and avoid unnecessary increases. We must remain adaptable to changing economic conditions. We must ensure that spending decisions are made with input from all stakeholders. We must review services for inclusion of technology solutions and streamlining. However, we are not going to be able to cut our way out of this. Going forward, we must adopt a 3-pronged strategy that raises revenue, increases efficiencies, and reduces expenditures. So let's look at just the 26 revenues. In developing the revenue estimates for FY26, several factors were considered. First, we had to acknowledge that we are in an unsettled national environment. Even so, we aimed at building a stronger Richmond to withstand the shocks and stresses to the system. So let me go back and talk about fiscal stress a little bit. Some of you have seen these slides and some of you are new to them. How do we compare to our neighbors in being able to raise revenue? The Commission on Local Government reports annually the fiscal condition of Virginia's 133 cities and counties by calculating a fiscal stress index. The fiscal stress illustrates a locality's ability to generate additional local revenues from its current tax base relative to the rest of the Commonwealth. The index is based on 3 components: revenue capacity, revenue effort, and median household income. The fiscal stress index shows Richmond has above average fiscal stress. Richmond is the 24th most fiscally stressed locality in Virginia. The fiscal stress index also shows our neighboring counties of Chesterfield, Hanover, and Henrico have below average to low fiscal stress. This means our neighboring counties have a greater ability to raise revenue. Another aspect of our ability to raise revenue relative to our neighbors is that we have more tax-exempt real estate than any other locality in the region. This is a significant constraint on our ability to raise revenue. As Virginia's capital, we host a significant number of state-owned buildings, universities like VCU, and nonprofits and hospitals. Our tax-exempt properties are 2 to 5 times that of our neighboring counties of Chesterfield, Hanover, and Henrico. This means that we have less opportunity to tax properties. According to the tax department, we are losing about $120 million a year. Another factor that's going to impact us, our revenue, is the upcoming years in the assessment cycle freeze. For as long as most of you have been on City Council, the budget and assessment cycles were not aligned. The budget is developed in the fall and winter of each year, with introduction and adoption in the spring. At the same time, we project what the revenue for the next year will be from reassessment that has just begun in January. You adopt a budget in May of each year, only to have a discussion on the real estate tax 5 months later, after the fiscal year has begun, with a budget that was predicated on the current tax rate. To fix this problem, the administration, in collaboration with the city assessor, city attorney's office, and city council, developed a plan that was approved last spring to change the assessment cycle calendar from January, which runs currently January through December, to July to June, which coincides with the fiscal year. This means that to realign the cycle, we must move to a biennial assessment cycle for for calendar year 26 and 27. The 26 land book values will be in effect for the real estate tax billings in tax year 26 and tax year 27. This means that the assessment that is done in 2025, which is being worked on currently, for 2026, will be the same one we use in 2027. During this biennial period, the assessment will not begin in January of 2026, but will begin in July of 2026. This results in what we call an assessment freeze for 2027, fiscal year 2027, because the January 1, 2026 land book will be the basis for the fiscal year 2027 budget. To get through FY 2027 with very little projected incremental revenue, we should be putting away money now. So focusing on FY 26, one penny of the $1.20 tax rate is equal to about $4.2 million in general fund revenue. That same 1 penny supports about $50 million in capital bond proceeds for projects. So it's not just the taxing environment that we look at. We also look at the economic indicators. We look at the gross domestic product. We look at employment. We look at unemployment. We look at price trends and inflation. Richmond continues to be a city of dynamic growth. However, we need to be mindful of the current and future national economies when we are budgeting for revenue. We also look at historical patterns and trends. We consult industry leaders and economists. Last December, we held our 3rd annual economic roundtable. We asked them some key questions. The consensus around the roundtable of industry experts and economists was that it was going to be a moderate growth in the next 6 to 24 months. But that was back then. That was before January. The outlook now has become more highly uncertain than when we were developing the budget with the recent changes in federal policy. The city services and our operations are also not immune to inflation or economic changes. We have many factors to consider as we continue navigating the unpredictable economic climate. Richmond continues to be attractive and a place to live, and its population is still increasing. From Census 2010 to Census 2020, Richmond's population grew by 11%, from 204,000 to 226,000. Employee recruiting and retention is extremely competitive. Richmond faces a tight labor market, and high expectations for salaries, benefits, and workplace culture are seen throughout the interview process. We face higher prices for energy, contractual obligations, and other areas such as IT, vehicles, various goods and services, and construction costs are also applicable to the inflation. So let's move into general fund revenue. Given the considerations, general fund revenues are still projected to increase by $54.6 million, or 5.5% in fiscal year 2026, which results in a $1.1 billion general fund budget. The real estate tax revenue increase accounts for about 76%, which is almost $41.3 million of this growth. Some of the other revenue highlights include business license tax, which is projected to increase by 3.7%. Meals tax is projected to increase by 4.6%. Sales and use tax is projected to increase by 1.2%. Lodging tax is expected to increase by 7.3%, and charges for service are projected to increase by 14.1%, largely from sanitation and waste removal. So where does the money come from? Like most localities, the general property tax includes real estate, personal property, and machinery and tools is our biggest source of revenue, making up almost 57% of the general fund budget. Other local taxes are the second largest category, which make up 21% of our general fund budget. This includes sales tax, meals tax, admission, transient lodging, consumer utility, and business licenses. We also receive about 12% of our revenue from the federal government and the Commonwealth. Generally, we saw large revenue increases when we were coming out of the COVID pandemic. Now that revenues have recovered, growth has returned to more typical patterns. As you can see from the last two columns of the charts on this slide, we are stabilizing. In the upper left graph, the sales and use tax is forecasted to continue to grow moderately by 1.2%. And again, the meals tax is forecasted to grow by 4.6%. At the bottom left, the lodging tax is shown, projected to grow by 7.3%, and this revenue is dedicated to GRECA, our convention center. Moving to the right, the business license tax is projected to grow by 3.7%. Collection rates, they are on the rise. The charts on the slide show our collection rate for real estate and personal property taxes since fiscal year 2015. There are two lines in each chart. The orange line is the current levy. The blue line is the total levy. The good news is our collection rates have been trending upward. The Department of Finance has really stepped up enforcement actions, which has contributed to the higher collection rates. The chart on the left is real estate collection, which is at 97% compared to 93% in 2015. The chart on the right side is the personal property tax collection, which is above 100% because we had some supplemental billings that year. Most of you know the timeline, but for a recap for the public, I think for budgeting and cash flow purposes, it's important to understand when our cash comes in. Real estate and personal property taxes are levied in the fall and spring. It's a twice-a-year billing. Business license renewal, business returns, and business personal property filings are due in March. Admission, lodging, and meals taxes, which are called trust taxes, meaning that the business themselves estimate their collections, are filed monthly and due by the 20th of the previous month's receipts. So we can stop here if you want, or I can keep going and take some questions, or I can just keep running through and take them at the end.
Members, are there questions at this point? Okay, please proceed, Mr. Hogg. I'm sure there will be.
Moving on to expenditures, the proposed FY 2026 all funds budget is a $3 billion budget. Net of transfers, and I want to introduce this term, net of transfers, is about $2.6 billion. That is because accounting rules basically say you have to have appropriation in both funds to spend the money. So something like schools. Our local contribution is contained in the $1 billion budget, but then we transfer it to Richmond Public Schools. And so both funds, both sides of the house have to have that appropriation to spend. So in some cases, you could say it's a double count, but it's not because both sides really have to have that authority to spend. But when you only count the expenditures one time, it is a $2.6 billion budget. In the past, we have generally focused on general fund. However, since FY 2023, when I got here, we have been changing the budget document and how we talk about the budget to become more inclusive of all fund sources. Each year, we continue to refine our processes and present transparent and cohesive budgets that look at all fund sources, not just the general fund. In FY 2024, we began recognizing the city's budget at $3.3 billion, which was made up of all sources. As you can see from the chart, the general fund makes up about 35%, capital is 18%, enterprise and schools are 17% respectively, and special revenue, which includes grants, HUD funding, and dedicated revenue, make up about 6%. Each year, we have changed the budget book to become a little bit more clearer, and we've still got a long way to go, but right now the budget book shows every transaction dollar for dollar change, and that is a change since I've gotten here. So the proposed FY26 general fund budget is $1.1 billion. This is because 54.6 million of the revenue growth previously discussed. The chart before you illustrates the allocation of the resources across all city departments. Or we can look at it this way. Backed by popular demand is the graphic that we show about how a dollar is spent. We received a lot of positive feedback from council members and the public about how useful the breakdown of a dollar was, so we've brought it back. When looking at the entire general fund budget, Richmond Public Schools accounts for 24%, followed by public safety, including emergency communications, is at 21%. These two categories amount to almost half of the general fund budget. After these two, there is not much money left for things we want to do versus have to do. Overall, our general fund budget is growing. On the chart, you will see two lines, one for operating and the second for personnel. As you can see, since 2021, operating grew by $136 million and personnel has grown by $141 million. Clearly, we have invested in our employees through salary increases, VRS, health insurance, and other benefits. Some of you have asked me for this breakdown as well. This is the collective bargaining breakdown. In 2022, City Council adopted collective bargaining. To date, City Council has adopted 3 collective bargaining agreements, with the remaining 2 coming before you very shortly. Their negotiated terms, those 2 contracts that are going to come to you have also been assumed in the 2026 budget. We have accounted for their expenses as well. Collective bargaining costs are projected to continue to increase year after year for an average increase of $29 million per year. Other changes are also attributed to positions in RPD, the SAFER grant in fire, positions in DEC, and changes in retirement rates, and I'll get into that in a minute. The general fund has also seen an increase in various programs which were once funded through the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA. To address key community needs, we now support these programs with general fund, like the Community Ambassadors, the Child Care and Education Trust Fund, Family Crisis Funding, the Health Equity Trust Fund, and Richmond Resiliency Initiatives. These were funded with other funds prior to coming into the general fund. Additionally, public safety positions previously supported through special fund are also included in the FY26 general fund budget. It is important to note that these changes alone have resulted in $10.5 million being supported by the general fund. It's not just the special fund programming, it is also the other programs that we support, like tax relief. While tax relief programs are vital to many of our residents, there is a direct effect on the general fund. Since calendar year 2020, various legislation has continued to expand the older adults and persons with disability real estate freeze and relief program. In 2023, we increased the income cap from $60,000 to $70,000, the net worth cap from $350,000 to $450,000. And in 2024, we allowed for the inclusions of persons in delinquent status, as long as they're on a payment plan, to enroll in the program. Also in 2024, we changed the parameters of the freeze program to increase the net income and net worth limits. As you can see from the visual on the slide, relief provided is increasing for both freeze and exemption programs, and it has outpaced budget amounts for the past few fiscal years. In FY26, we estimate the exemption and freeze program will cost us almost $7 million. 2026 expenditure budget increases. Despite the modest growth in revenue growth, the budget enforces the city's commitment to efficiency, stability, and the continued expansion of opportunities. The growth of 54.6 million consists of 37.9 million in personnel and 16.8 million in operating costs. An overall increase of 37.9 million for employees, which we will also get into in a minute. 10.8 million in operating for non-discretionary operating items, including contractual obligations like utilities, fleet, as well as payments to our quasi-governmental entities such as GRTC and GRECA. And a $6.3 million increase for transfers to a risk and DIT and internal service funds. The administration has been reviewing and streamlining operations and in some cases personnel costs for each department. These reductions have already been incorporated into the proposed budget. Let's take a minute to talk about personnel. The previously mentioned personnel growth accounts for 37.9 million or 69% of the growth. This includes salary increases, retirement, healthcare, and associated taxes like FICA, MedFICA, and group life. So let's look at the bigger shifts of personnel. Our largest growth within our citywide personnel is the direct investment in our employees. The ARM initiative introduced last year strengthens our commitment to supporting and empowering our employees. It is the Attract, Retain, and Motivate initiative. The city strives to be a leader in the local labor market through investments, but not limited to just the salary increase. But in the FY26 budget, the salary increases will result in a 3.25% increase for all general employees beginning July 1, a 3% salary increase for constitutional officers or employees provided by the state, and sworn police officer and firefighter employees will get an average of 10.3% increase. That includes the one-step increase and then the calculation of the average between Henrico, Hanover, Chesterfield, and 3% above that average. This is a combined investment of $18.6 million for general and sworn employee salary increases. Other compensation changes. The budget also includes a continuation of compensation elements. We have maintained the minimum hourly wage of $20 an hour, which is one of the highest of all municipalities in the Commonwealth. Healthcare is projected to increase at an average of 8%. We continue to offer dedicated health clinics for employees and their families who enrolled in the city's health insurance plan through Marathon Health. And just from the first 10 months of operation of the clinics, over 2,300 unique members have visited the clinic. And we just got this statistic on Friday. 54% of our population has one or more chronic illness. Of those who are engaged with Marathon, they are costing $5,700 less than a person who is visiting a provider outside in the community. At Marathon, employees and their dependents benefit from preventative, acute care services that are either free or offered at a nominal cost, which reduces the overall healthcare expenses for both employees and the city. The budget also includes a continuation of citywide short and long-term disability benefits for employees that began in January of 2025. So let's move on to public safety. Our personnel numbers have also increased with our public safety staffing. In 2023, the city received a staffing for adequate fire and emergency response called SAFER. It's a grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for the Department of Fire. By accepting this grant, we made a commitment to maintain 72 firefighter positions which were once supported by the grant. These 72 firefighter positions and associated costs of $6.6 million are now included in the general fund and have increased the number of trained frontline firefighters available to our community. The Department of Emergency Communications and Preparedness has also seen an increase in their personnel dollars. 22 positions from the Emergency Communications Special Fund, which is a telecom fee, are now included in the general fund budget because that fee is not enough to cover the salaries of those personnel, because our salary increases are outpacing the fee revenue that is being brought in. For DEC, it is important to clarify this represents a funding reallocation and not new positions. Now let's look a little bit, look at the operating budget. Of the $54 million expenditure increase, $16.8 million or 31% is the increase within our operating budget. Let's look at a breakdown of how we got here. First, when you build a budget, I told you we start with the revenue side of the house. But on the expenditure side, we look at all the one-time revenue that was provided in the prior fiscal year. So one-time revenue is for the purchase of equipment or software that is only a one-time purchase. So the first action that we do is we pull those funds out because theoretically you should not need them for a second year. So we remove those one-time funds from the budget as the start point. This reduction totaled about $32 million. And then we knew that the budget, or going forward, the budget would require difficult decisions. So we asked our operations and identified $4.6 million in reductions that they submitted. Next, we funded our mandatory citywide contract increases at $4.5 million. This includes contracts within police and fire for personal protective gear and equipment and other equipment for fire. We made necessary increases to critical items for DIT, utility charges, and fleet. Lastly, we also provided increases for critical needed items such as the contribution to schools. The largest increase within our operating budget is our contribution to Richmond Public Schools. Of the $16.8 million, this budget proposes an increase of $9.6 million to RPS. Even with other department budgets getting a reduction, we did get an increase. Richmond Public Schools support. In Virginia, the funding for school support is a cost share, or it's a portion between the state and the locality. State funding is based on the average daily membership, or otherwise known as ADM, and the required local effort. The state uses the SOQ model to fund schools. The model uses enrollment, local composite index, sales tax, ADM, and several other components to arrive at their funding levels and how much we should be providing as a locality. Once the state has determined their cost, then they apply the cost share to the locality, which is called our required local effort. Or as we would call it here, the local contribution or city share. Local funding increased 64% over the last 10 years. On this slide, we compared the growth of the local contribution and the state support for RPS since 2017. This is a 10-year look back. As you can see, the city support has outpaced the amount provided by the state. Furthermore, over the last 10 years, our local contribution has increased over 64%, while the state has only increased 35%. This is a clear indication that the division of funding sources is imbalanced. The city also, I mentioned to you earlier, the state requires a minimum contribution from each locality called the local required effort, or RLE. This amount is based on the SOQ formula. For FY26, according to the state, the city should be contributing $138 million for the SOQ programs and $34 million for all other programs, for a total of $173 million. However, we provide almost $249 million. To put it another way, we provide 144% or $76 million above the program required effort. The bottom line is the city is making a significant investment in our school system. So moving on to partner agencies, formerly known as the charitable organizations within non-departmental. For many years, the city of Richmond has allocated significant dollars to nonprofit and charitable organizations. However, recent assessments and the discussions with the audit committee have raised concerns about the effectiveness and oversight of the current process. The audit committee expressed that the funds provided to these organizations should be provided for services that meet the goals and established priorities of the city, meaning the services contracted should help achieve measurable results that have been identified as a priority service need of the city. Contracting for these services should be for a service for which it has been determined that we are unable to provide, or it would have been more cost prohibitive for us to provide. Service selection should be those that can more efficiently be executed by community partners. We also said that after the budget season is over, the mayor and council and administration will work together to redesign the process and set expectations going forward. And the process and expectations that will be developed need to be properly staffed and have resources to fulfill the obligations as determined. In anticipation of the coming changes, the proposed FY26 budget redefines charitable organizations to outside agencies. From 2024, 2024 adopted budget to FY25 adopted budget, the contribution to these organizations grew by $4.3 million, or 47%. The proposed FY26 budget reduces contributions to the partner agencies by $4.1 million, approximately a 30% less than in FY 2025. So we are committed to improvement. As we move forward, we need to decide where we would like to go when it comes to partnering with our nonprofit community. We have made considerable changes in contracting and monitoring over the past 2 years, but more is needed. In FY 2025 and 26, we both saw a similar process with nonprofits submitting applications, having those applications evaluated and scored, and final decisions being made. For FY 2027, we should consider how to streamline the process, ensure transparency, measure impact, and assure fiscal accountability with taxpayer dollars. Taking the time to get this right will also ensure legal compliance and thoughtful implementation. Investing in youth and communities. Told you it was a long presentation. Moving to another priority of the mayor is thriving families. The proposed 26 budget invests in early childhood education, after-school programs, and partnerships with Richmond Public Schools. There is $500,000 for the Child Care and Education Trust Fund, $520,000 for Family Crisis Funding, $300,000 for Health Equity Trust Fund, $300,000 for the Trauma Healing Response Network, $500,000 for Richmond Resilience Initiative, $457,000 for out-of-school time, and $9.6 million as an increase to RPS. These programs combined represent a total investment of over $12 million in our youth and community. Supporting our public health partners. We don't always talk about them, but there are quiet partners in our community making change. RAA. As you know, the city subsidy is provided to help cover uninsured and indigent populations who are unable to pay for ambulance transport services after other billing sources are exhausted. As such, third-party insurance providers, Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement should be maximized before using city dollars first. We have maintained FY25's adopted operational subsidy for RAA of $7.1 million. And Ms. Trammell, yes, we can. I did check. There was a request that we would consider purchasing the ambulances and vehicles like we did last time. I'm working with finance to come with a solution on that. And I did talk to Chip. Richmond City Health District. We are continuing our commitment and partnership with Richmond Health District. They provide a comprehensive set of public health programs and services. And for FY26, they're at $4.6 million. Richmond Behavioral Health Foundation. The proposed budget provides a continued funding for them to support their efforts around Trauma Healing Response Network. This network is a coalition of grassroots, community-based organizations and mental health partners who provide support services to families and communities impacted by gun violence. Richmond Behavioral Health Authority, RBHA. The proposed 26 budget also includes a slight increase of $136,000 to RBHA. This increase is tied to the city's mandatory local match required by the Commonwealth. Thriving neighborhoods. As we have so often said, we remain committed to addressing the housing crisis. This means helping the unhoused and those who cannot afford to live in their houses or find a new home. The budget includes over $49 million in housing services in FY26. We are maintaining over $4 million of the general fund budget in departments such as neighborhoods, HCD, DPW, and DSS to address homelessness. Continued investment in the eviction diversion program is at $800,000, in addition to $500,000 for preventive eviction services. The proposed FY26 budget also includes the third installment of the $10 million investment for affordable housing through our CIP. But that is not the only investment we made to housing services. We also included another $7.9 million to support Creighton Court redevelopment project. Also, annually, the city receives funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. In FY26, we are estimated to receive almost $14 million. The city has received Community Development Block Grant, which is part of the HUD funding, since 1975. We received the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG, since 1989. Home Investment Partnership, we have been receiving since 1993. And we receive funding for housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, or what we call HOPWA, since 1997. But that's not all. The FY26 proposed budget continues to fund homeless programs through various departments and services. This includes the support for 206 city-funded shelter beds, 100 year-round beds at the Salvation Army and Home Again, and 106 inclement weather beds at the Salvation Army, and 300 year-round beds supported through other community funds. The city has diverted over 1,600 evictions through the eviction diversion program and supported homeless service liaisons. As you recall, the eviction diversion program is a resource that provides help to bring tenants' outstanding rent to a zero balance within 3 months or less. We've also invested in our Family Crisis Fund. We're also working with our regional partners to address the needs of the unhoused. But there's still more. Affordable housing performance grants now total more than $100 million in relief. In 2022, the General Assembly provided localities the authority to provide performance grants for the construction of affordable housing. Under the city's new program authorized by legislation, developers can receive performance grant when they construct and designate a percentage of their units at or below 80% of the area median income. For each year following construction, if the conditions are met, a grant payment equivalent up to 100% of the incremental increase in real estate tax liability is provided to the developer for no more than 30 years. Since 2022, the City Council has approved 23 affordable housing performance grants across 5 City Council districts. The 23 affordable housing performance grants are helping to create more than 3,000 affordable housing units. So let's talk a little bit about economic development for a minute. As interest in our city remains as a top destination to live, visit, and have a business, this budget continues support to our economic development partners. Our commitment to GRTC maintains an increase to support the CPI index adjustment, as well as supporting fare free rides with funding through the CVTA. Our investment in tourism through RRT, which is Richmond Regional Tourism, has increased, first in them bringing hotel stays in the Richmond region, and they set a new collective record for annual occupancy tax revenue in FY 2024. And the second, adopted by City Council, we established the Tourism Improvement District. Those funds are a special assessment, and those go back to what we call the TID. So every year, not just during budget time, all year round, we look at how do we better serve our community? How do we better align our services? How do we better align our departments for synergy and efficiency? As a result of this review, this ongoing review, we're proposing a few realignments. One is the Director of Transportation. As the city continues to grow and become more densely populated, a more coordinated effort is needed. There are many players in this field on the internal side. We have DPW, we have planning, we have economic development, and everybody has an opinion, which is good. But the opinion we also need to consider is the community. So we need to establish a balance between the engineering aspects of projects with the community's desire for accessible and walkable bike-friendly roadways. To strengthen this coordination, the proposed budget includes the creation of a transportation director position. This position will help strengthen coordination within existing departments and external stakeholders. It will also help develop a unified transportation vision that aligns with land use and economic development goals. This position will be an accredited transportation planner, and it is created by reallocating an existing position and funds. It is net neutral to the budget. The budget also creates a chief transformation manager or officer. By reallocating an existing position within the Department of Budget and Strategic Planning, this position will be vital in developing and implementing a new strategic plan for the city. A core focus of this role will be the update and revisions to our performance measures, or as we call them, the KPIs, to track progress. This commitment to accountability and continuous improvement and keeping the city with results is a key priority for the mayor. We're also refining Department of General Services. With the establishment of the Department of General Services in FY25, we are advancing our efforts to streamline and realign department functions for greater efficiency and synergy. As part of this reorganization, the Facilities Management Division is transitioning from DPW to DGS, ensuring a more focused oversight and improved operations. The shift is budget neutral, reallocating existing resources rather than increasing expenditures. While we have discussed in detail the personnel and operating changes within the general fund budget, let's now turn to a few other key details. Let's talk a little bit about fee increases. The FY26 proposed budget includes modest fee increases for solid waste recycling, parking, and utilities. Solid waste is proposed to increase by almost just 3 cents per day or $1 a month, going from $23.75 to $24.75. This is needed because oftentimes solid waste pickup is considered a fee-for-service operation, but we are nowhere close to that. If you lived in our surrounding neighborhoods, in our surrounding counties, the counties do not pick up the trash. The residents there have to contract for the trash and recycling services on their own. This is a service that we offer for our city residents, and if you know Bobby Vincent, he picks up anything. This increase is needed due to ongoing cost increases in waste management operations, as well as upgrades and improvements needed for waste management and the fleet vehicles. The recycling fee is a contracted service. It is proposed to increase by $1.34 or from $2.99 to $4.33 a month. The current recycling contract that we have incurs a cost of $4.33 per resident, while the city has been charging only $2.99 for many, many years. We are not breaking even with this contract. Parking fees are also increasing for monthly rates by $5, hourly rates by $1, and the maximum charge by $2. We have 10 city garages and 11 surface lots. They are in need of maintenance. That is concrete, and they are old garages. We need to take care of them. These necessary fee increases will help fund improvements to the aging parking infrastructure and enhance overall parking management across the city. Parks and Recreation is also including the new rental space at Midtown Green into the fee schedule. This is not a new fee increase, but adding additional space into the schedule. Utility infrastructure. There's been a lot of talk about utilities and, of course, our water treatment plant. The proposed budget also includes fee adjustments for the Department of Utilities. The city's public utilities and enterprise fund, it is not supported by general fund. It is what we call a fee for service. It is run like a business for a service where the fees from users covers the cost of the services. It should not and cannot generate more revenue than needed to support the operations and capital improvement projects. The proposed budget for public utilities proactively addresses some of the utility needs of very old systems. The gas utility plans to invest over $200 million over the next 5 years, replacing leak-prone pipes, which will improve reliability and efficiency. Stormwater utility continues significant investments to address chronic flooding in areas of the city that do not have a stormwater conveyance system. The water utility is investing over $162 million over the next 5 years on the water distribution system. The wastewater utility will be investing over $150 million over the next 5 years on upgrades to plant operations and an additional $340 million on the replacement of aging sewer pipes. We are a very old city. We have to take care of our infrastructure. So all of those are supported by modest utility rate increases. And let me just say, these rate increases are not in response to the water crisis. They are planned rate increases. We review them annually. We have an outside vendor that comes in and looks at our rate structure and gives us a proposal. Recognizing that the rate increases affect everyone, we're committed to keeping the costs as low as possible, but still provide services that we can count on. The proposed rates reflect a balance between investing in infrastructure for safe and reliable services and ensuring that the rates are as low as possible. They've got to generate revenues that fund the critical infrastructure improvements, aligned with sound financial policies, maintain sufficient debt coverage ratios, and provide funding for cash finance capital projects which reduces our borrowing costs. The proposed increases in utilities will be an average of $12.83 per month or 42 cents a day. So let's talk about some of the policy changes, as the mayor said. The budget, as I said previously, the budget is a policy document. It is a plan to spend money on services and priorities that have been identified. The budget process not only looks at making changes to dollars and cents, but also looks at changes for good governance by how we structure the organization, streamline processes, and become more efficient. It is customary practice for organizations to clean up language that may be outdated, in conflict with other areas of law, or prevent the organization from becoming more efficient because of lengthy administrative processes. So with that, let me give you an overview of the changes that are proposed. And again, as the mayor said, it is the will of the council of whether or not you want to approve these. One is the deadline for the budget introduction. The amendment removes the specific time of day, the 3 p.m. deadline. As you know, we were trying to get on planes to go see rating agencies this year, and we discovered the budget had to be presented at 3 p.m. We are not changing the day of introduction, just the time. And we will present anytime you want us to present. This change is directly related to the budget. The non-departmental section. This code section was proposed for elimination because we no longer call it non-departmental, but we call it outside agencies. And it is in anticipation of the changes are coming. It in no way reflects that we will not do contracts or performance measures or site visits. Processes that we have currently in place will continue until we have developed a process in collaboration with you. Refund of payment sections. There is code provision that says that the city attorney's office has to approve refunds that are provided by the director of finance, or actually the commissioner of revenue, because Sheila White is both commissioner of revenue and director of finance here. State law gives that authority to the commissioner of revenue, who is our director of finance. We are finding that we are having delays by this additional administrative burden. The calculations are all done by the finance department, and the sole authority and responsibility is of the finance director. The city attorney's review of it, other than saying it's okay, everything else is determined by the finance director. And we are trying to remove delays out of that process. It also removes unnecessary burdens that could delay our financial reconciliation or impact year-end fund balance calculations. The residency requirements are changed to reflect more of a business need versus personal exemptions. And again, that is the will of the council of how you want to approach that. But we are in a competitive labor market, and hiring with our neighbors is somewhat tricky. They do not have residency requirements except for basically like their county manager. and maybe very other little staff. But again, we are trying to become competitive. We have done a lot in the past few years with salaries and benefits, and we are getting qualified candidates in the door now. Advertising of job vacancies and unclassified. The section talks about advertising in the newspaper of unclassified positions, which are generally appointed. That does not mean that we don't do it competitively. We do when we need to, but we don't advertise in the newspaper anymore. Everything is done on a social media app or online. So again, trying to find efficiencies and cost savings where we can. Public access to legal opinions. The legal opinions, either verbally or written, are provided by the city attorney's office and protected by the attorney-client privilege. Putting them out for public display will violate that section, that attorney-client privilege. This is done to protect administration, council members, and the operations. It does not mean that we will not get attorney advice or opinions. Again, just trying to clean up code sections where we can become more efficient. And we fully understand that it is the council's will of whether or not you want to move forward with this. That is why the budget process takes place. So in conclusion, the proposed 2026 budget is about balancing the city's needs while staying financially responsible and becoming more efficient government. We are investing where it matters, prioritizing public safety, better roads, schools, and economic growth. We're working towards a smarter, more efficient government using technology and innovation to make city services work better for everyone. During the upcoming year, we plan to analyze services for either outsourcing or insourcing, whichever one has a better ROI for us. We will also conduct analysis on services that can become 100% cost recovery. Whether or not we will move towards that will be a collaborative discussion, but we will complete that analysis. Making strategic investments in how to keep the city strong and prepared is what's needed. We look forward to continued dialogue with you as part of the budget process to ensure the best outcomes. With that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Ms. Joy Hogg. I was going to ask if you might need a water break there. Thank you for the presentation. Members, do we have questions at this time for Ms. Joy Hogg? Ms. Gibson, Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm a bit frustrated, and I appreciate the presentation, and I want to thank all of the team members who I know have put in a lot of time into putting this presentation together. But I'm frustrated. I like to do my homework, you know, and I made promises to folks. I knocked doors, and you know, people in my district and from my sense citywide, they're frustrated with how the city's been operating, and so I made promises. And in this moment, I feel like I'm just not able to do that. Let me think of where I start. I mean, you know, like I'm a regular person. I have a full-time job, you know, so over the weekend, I spent a lot of time digging into documents to prepare. And I went up at 7 o'clock. I looked because I wanted to understand what the plan was for this meeting. I wanted to prepare, and there were no documents, you know. And so I planned on asking questions. Then I go to work this morning, and then I find out that at 8 o'clock last night, some questions were answered. I don't know, 20-page document, right? There was no time for me to have done that. And I now see a presentation. The presentation, I mean, I call, when this happens, and again, this is not offense, but I call this the take one, pass it down, right? And this is not how we govern, you know? This is not what collaboration looks like. And I'm asking that we reimagine this budgeting process, right? Because first off, council has 4 budget sessions that are 2 hours long each. And we just spent an hour of our time receiving a presentation that frankly is outlined in the document that I have spent the past week or so diving into. And I know my colleagues have done the same. So I'd like to see if we can get some additional time, because I believe we're going to need it. So to that end, let's talk about how we can reimagine how this process works. One, I would like to see that the presentation happen in early March as it did before. Henrico made their presentation with their budget, I believe it was February 27th, 8th. There's no reason why we should be waiting another month to begin this process. Essentially, what happens if it's late, right? It's like we're running down the clock. There's a tension. The administration puts a lot of time into making a budget, and I'm sure the administration would like for us to make no changes to it, right? But we've been asked and tasked by our constituents to really do our homework and to dig in and make sure that those dollars are going in the right place. And when there's not enough time to do that, we effectively can't do our job. So my ask is that the presentation happen in the beginning of March, and that ahead of the mayor's presentation, we have a budget. That the budget is shared ahead of the presentation so that we can ask questions right then. Council member Trammell hoped to ask some questions then. I see no reason why we shouldn't be given that opportunity. That this begin with collaboration, I think that the questions and all of that's happened in a much more condensed time frame, and that those questions are made public. The answers to the questions. I received this in an email at 8:00 last night. So now, and not only do I do my homework, but people in the 3rd district, we all do our homework, but none of them can, because none of them were able to see those questions and answers that were shared via email instead of putting public onto the Legistar as should happen, right? I just think that we can do better, I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of thoughts on how we can look at the reality that we have. But this is not it. Yeah. A couple other, and again, this is mundane stuff, a couple other mundane asks. When we're talking about trends, that we publish where that trend data is coming from. So on page 6 of the presentation that you just shared, page 7, page 27, I believe that's what had the collective bargaining trends. It's important to see what those trends are based on. Much of the comments that I heard were that, painting a pretty scary financial picture, and I get that. But also, we're telling folks it's scary, but also at the same time, they're paying more. They're paying more. Since 2022, the amount that we've collected from property tax has gone up from like $440 some odd million to over $600 million, right? And this year they're going up again. So it's hard for the public to trust us if we're telling them we have no money and yet they're paying more. So we owe them more of an explanation. The amount of detail about the changes, it's just inadequate. I think it was in IT, there's a line item for an additional $5 million in operating expenses. And the explanation, it uses the word routine, right? And a $5 million bump, if we are at a place where a $5 million bump is routine, we have to think a bit more. We need to be able to identify what those spend, what that actually is. $5 million is not routine. I'm not saying it's not justified, but we have to be more clear. So I've asked to see that, there's an open data portal that has a contract database. It's not up to date. It doesn't even include the amount of the contracts. That should be public. I wanted to find out salary information because one of the things I believe is that we revisit the increase for our highest paid employees, folks making over $150,000 a year. I wanted to be able to make an estimate about what that was. In order to do that, I had to go and pull data from the Richmond Times-Dispatch because it's not available, I want to know about all of the nonprofits because there's nonprofit dollars being spent outside of non-departmental. And these are questions that the public wants us to ask. So let's not just talk about transparency with blindfolds and trust circles, right? Like, I want us to do the work. And that begins by allowing enough time for us to do right by the people, right? I mean, I'm going to be fighting for the people's budget, but let me be clear. This entire billion-dollar budget is the people's budget. And we need a true process with access to information in order to do right by them.
Councilmember Gibson, I want to say thank you for that feedback. And I've had opportunity to hear from other council members, same kind of concerns raised. And so what I said, and I'll come back to you, Ms. Joy Hogg, for this iteration, we can certainly add more time, get more information, but that I would be asking, and I have not had the opportunity to say to her yet, as Chair of Finance, to get with council members and administration to talk about prospectively what the budget process could look like that would address many of those questions, timing when things are submitted, opportunity for greater collaboration, et cetera. So just to say, I have heard that feedback and made that certainly a statement that I would be following up in that regard to be able to get the kind of increased specificity, if you will, that you're asking about across the budget. And to be in conversation with with the administration, certainly Ms. Joy Hogg, et cetera, so we can have that kind of, again, process going forward. But then what do we do in this moment as well so we can still get that level of detail that would be made available so that we can make informed decisions. And I want to kind of punt to Ms. Abubakar, and then I'm going to go back to Ms. Joy Hogg to also get, because you hear the concern and on timing on when we receive things, all those kind of things. So I'm going to go to Councilmember Abubakar and then back to Ms. Joy Hogg.
Thank you, President Newbill. I want to reiterate what Councilmember Gibson said about this process. In slide, what was it? Slide 6, possibly. We talk about, slide 4, we talk about engaged in ongoing collaboration with council members. But again, Ms. Joy Hogg, not to beat a dead horse, but the very first time we interacted, you said, I did not ask for council member priorities because I have no intention of incorporating them into the budget. So with that, and then this process of not knowing what we're getting until, we've basically had 2 weeks to read a 605-page document and then follow up with questions. One, like an overarching question for me is, are we in a budget crisis or a budget cliff, or are we not?
Let me take your second question first. 27, if all things remained equal, it's going to be a tough year. We have to manage it, but I do believe we can manage it. but we do need to put some money away for it. That is your 27 year. I can't tell you what the federal funding is going to look like. I don't know. It's one day we get notice that the funding is gone, next day it comes back. So I mean, if the expenses continue to rise like they have been, then yes, we will have a lot of trouble going forward because our revenues are just not keeping pace.
So and there is no flexibility in the people of the city of Richmond to take any additional burden. People are breaking under the cost of living in this city. I've lived in this city my entire life. I love this city, and I'm having trouble, and I'm fortunate. I've got neighbors who are retired, who have lived in my neighborhood since it was Chesterfield County, and they are having to leave. They can't age in place. It is not on individuals to sustain this budget. It can't be.
Mhm.
That being said, you mentioned $4.6 million in reductions that you all did. I'm curious. I'm all for investing in government. I studied government. I have my master's in public administration. I believe in this stuff, but the sheer numbers of what we are adding here, I mean, 4.6 million is like, that's a drop in the bucket by comparison to what we are increasing. So, and I'm not picking on anybody, right? But like $1.3 million in neighborhood and community services. We've got almost $4 million in emergency communications, preparedness, and response. We don't even know what we're doing with the 911 thing. We're still working on that through public safety. Why are we adding that much right now? We've got vacant positions across the board. Office of Community Wealth Building, an additional $250,000. A lot of these shops do some sort of engagement in the community. I'm not sure which communities because I don't see them in mine, but like they're doing something, right? Or we think they are, but like, is that, there's 6 million right there. And I'm not saying like cut all of that. I'm just saying to say that $4.6 million is what you found when we're at a $3 billion budget, it doesn't feel like anything. So what I would ask and implore you to do is to go back with your teams and figure out where do we have similar overlap in departmental outcomes, right? Like all of these, Office of Strategic Communications and Engagement says engagement. Community Wealth Building talks about community engagement, increasing awareness. Community Services talks about deepening partnerships, engagement, outreach. These are all things that these departments are doing. Where, like, can we be looking at real efficiencies for that? So I'll start there. I mean, I just think that there's more work to be done here because there's other things, other programmatic things that we need to focus on. I don't think that the answer is, and I also want to ask, does the 3.25% go across the board for
Yes.
everybody? Okay, because a lot of people got really big salary increases over the last 3 years. I would think we would want to take a different approach and say, if somebody got, a 30% increase over the last 4 years, maybe they don't need the 3.25, but maybe our custodian, maybe we could bring in our new tech custodial staff. Maybe we could be doing 10% increases for our lowest paid people. To me, that's the definition of equality versus equity. And I think that this approach doesn't get to the equitable solution for how we fund our city workers, because those are the people that are delivering core services. And it seems to me this budget doesn't reflect in FTEs a lot of delivery of core services, but certainly there are a significant number of upgrades to people being supervisors, management analysts, senior management analysts, or managers or directors. Those are all valid things, but they don't get to core services. They do not deliver the things that we need. So I'd ask you to go back with that in mind and look at, because you're the expert, like where these cuts can be made.
So, Councilmember Abubakar, I want to say thank you again. I want to make sure, because as I understand it, those questions have been so that they've been all submitted so that they can go to the administrator, so we can get those answers back. So Ms. Joy Hogg, Mr. Slats will get all of those to you, and if there are any additional, certainly. But thank you for that, and thank you for your uh, feedback on the process, as certainly well as Ms. Gibson both. And we'll look at more in terms of going forward. Councilmember Jones? Councilmember Jones?
Oh, thank you, Madam President. Thank you so much for your presentation. I want to echo some of the sentiments that Ms. Abubakar, Ms. Gibson alluded to, but again, it's kind of hard to go through all the questions. It's a really big document, so we need to go back, look at what you submitted, and then I guess follow up. But my concern that I was listening as you were sharing with this proposal, the page investing in youth and communities. One, you read the numbers off, but we didn't.
What page is that?
Page 44. And so you read the numbers off for each investment, but here you just gave us the total. And then I think I kind of am aligning with what my colleagues are saying when we look across personnel, but then we look at programs relative specifically for young people. I would really like to get a little more intel on what that looks like. And last year, when we talked about the budget, we really spoke about prioritizing youth and young people in the community. And I don't really feel like we're doing that. I feel like we're continuing to like bucket based on what programs or what offerings we feel are the need. And I want to know like what is our citywide strategy? And when I ask that, I'm asking in terms of when you talk about the Office of Community Wealth Building and you're saying, you know, from this year we need to save money, and then the year after we're going to, it's going to be kind of tight. So I would think that a department like Community Wealth Building is much more needed now, along with youth and families and folks who are going to be looking for jobs. We see folks, you know, the rapid rate of folks losing employment, and so they need resources. And I don't feel like a lot of that is reflected in these numbers and in this budget to plan for the future for our young people. What is the plan for our young people? And not just plan for stabilizing taxes or, you know, freezing them or making sure that we align the schedules. What is the plan for the future for our young people for Richmond City? And I would like to really get a clear understanding on what that means and what that looks like so that we can begin to plan forward with that and do that lockstep, because they're not going anywhere. And so, yes, we make significant investments into Richmond Public Schools, but we cannot program our way out of this thing. We have got to get serious about what we are offering, and I would really like to know what that looks like. And so going back to what Ms. Abubakar again mentioned about all of this engagement and all of this stuff that we're saying we're engaging our communities, what are we actually engaging them about? And what are we actually equipping them with to do so that as we move as a city, they can keep up or feel like they are part of the city that they live in. And so that's one of the issues that I really would like to talk about. And then also, when we are speaking about strategic investments or, you know, all of these, as we said, overlapping areas of the city, can we just get clear? Can we just get clear? Because if we're not clear, then clearly the public is not clear. And so we really need to have a clear sense of what these divisions are doing. And let's not, like I was here last year, it was my first budget. We opened these new offices. And then as we opened them, we're still working it out. They need to be worked out before we put them online. If we're making an investment in it, it needs to already be worked out. And so I think some of the frustration and some of the issues is the fact that we're building the bus as we go. But we don't have time to build the bus as we go. We have people in our city that are dying, that are in crisis. The Family Crisis Fund and all of these things, these are serious issues. And so we can't build it as we go. We have to have it together and we need to have it ready. So we're saying we're going to hire a new transformation person that's going to design the strategic plan for the city. So what is the plan then? We don't have one. We building it as we go. And so I think that is where, again, every opportunity to move us forward. I think when it comes to budget, the frustration is always we're spending the money, but we also are still creating or we ideating. And I would like to know personally, I want to see a breakdown of the amount of money that we're giving to the Family Crisis Fund, the children and families, all of those numbers that you kind of rattled off. And then I want to compare those against the personnel that we said that you had the 4.6 million or something. I really want to see the difference. What was the 4.6 million? I'm sorry. So, Ms. Joy Hogg.
Reductions.
Right. So if there's 4.6 million in reductions, I want to see exactly what that is. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. And those,
Can I just clarify? So the numbers you're looking for are the numbers I read to you, or you want detailed budgets for them?
yes, and Mr. Slats will have that list and make sure with each council member that we have exactly the questions so we can get them to the administration in preparation for that follow-up discussion. Ms. Joy Hogg, I didn't know if at this point, any comment? Hopefully you're hearing the path, at least for this budget, the level of additional detail that's being requested, and that will come to you in a list so we can really have the information that's being requested. And then to talk about prospectively the next budget cycle and then what that will look like in terms of timing, greater collaboration, et cetera. Matthew,
Can I just say,
absolutely.
whatever list you want, just be very clear about it. So, I mean, something like I heard the youth plan, that's very innocuous in terms of what I can give you. If you're looking for lists of salaries,
We're going to make
types of
sure
programs, that's fine. I can give you all of
we're
that.
going to make sure you have exactly the question that the members have asked. Matthew's going to capture that and make sure you have those in exactly the way they're being asked, so we can get that information back. Okay. Any Councilmember Jones, you still lit up. Is there something else? Okay. All right. Vice President Jordan.
Oh, I think actually, Councilwoman Robertson had hers lit up first.
Okay. I'll get this adjusted, Councilmember Robinson. Didn't see you there. Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for the presentation. Budget, putting together a budget and finalizing a budget is a big job. A big job that you guys have done in bringing us a proposed budget. And I think it's important that we honor the work that has been done. I wouldn't want to be in the mayor's seat ever the first year, being elected and taking his seat January and present a budget and 3 months later. So a lot of dependency and relying on you and your team to prepare a budget for the mayor to produce to us is a tremendous lift, especially on the year of election. Maybe the next 4 years will be a little bit different. at least 3 of those years.
And a water crisis.
Well, we will have a crisis. Let's just be clear. We have had many crises in this city, and we will continue to have crises in this city. Crises that we cannot plan for, and we don't know that they're going to happen. We have to deal with them as they come about. So that's just the nature of life and the business that we all in. So taking that in consideration, and if we want to be more proactive for crisis prevention, we should have a special crisis fund for the sake of addressing crisis, because we know they're going to happen. Something going to happen. I don't know what they would be, and no one else in here does neither. So right now, I am very passionate and very sensitive to council members that are serving, and you have taken your seat like the mayor has in January. And this is a extremely big job to take on in 3 months for all of us, even us that have been here a long time. So I don't want to suggest that it gets any easier. And some of the comments that have been made as far as policy and procedures and what we need to do and whether we need to do the budget differently, I think are very serious proposed recommendation that we need to weigh and determine whether or not they are good, not so good, or how much a difference any of them would make. And it would be extremely, last year budget was a very hard time for me because I had a lot of family issues that I was dealing with that robbed me of the time to invest as much as I would have normally have done. And those are crises too that come up in our lives that we don't know they're going to happen, right? And we have to deal with them. But I do think that we should make note, Madam President, of any recommendations for changing the process and procedure as to how we put the budget together. I think we need to have work sessions on those. I think we need to determine how we can get in front of those for next year. We're a day late, dollar short to be talking about processes and changing processes to some degree to how much time we have to invest between now. We have May 15th, right? That's the drop dead date for us to adopt a budget. If we do not adopt a budget by May 15th, unless we decide to separate schools, and we can do that, we can separate schools out and we can make that vote by the 15th of May, and then we have a little bit longer time to deal with the general fund budget. It's an option that is available to us. But it is going to require significant investment of our time to really be able to get all of the work done. Now, we have been presented, Madam President, which needs to be corrected. This form here that says Richmond City Council budget meeting schedules. It needs to be updated. We're having our first session today, which shows on this schedule our second, and it's due on April 9th. And so we need to get our paperwork in order so that all of the council members can follow. And we can plan in advance because we know exactly what is coming up for those presentations. Secondly, Madam President, I would ask, I've got some papers that were presented at the last meeting that we had that was just given to us. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional pretty huge documents that was given to me today. I have no idea what this is. And so when we are presenting ourselves with information at the moment that we walk in here and take our seat, and we haven't had an opportunity even to go, we should do this first. This should be the first line of business when we walk in here, is to tell me what is this that you've given me, because I have no idea what this is, okay? And we can make a decision from there so that when we ask the staff to come before us and make a presentation, we prepared ourselves with what we already got in our hand to know what we got and whether or not it answers some of our questions. Maybe, maybe not, don't know. So I think that's the first order of business that we need to take in line. And then I think council needs to agree. We need to agree that there are some policy decisions that we made last year. We agreed to provide for collective bargaining. We agreed. We agreed how much we were going to increase salaries. Those things have been agreed to by this council, which tells this administration, bring us a budget with those policies and ordinances that we put in place. Come to us, right? That should be answered up front by the administration. These are the policies that you put in place. This is how much you agreed that you wanted to see in the budget and what it costs. So that, when we're talking about whether or not we should spend so much money for certain things. Now, do we agree up front what we want to pay as an increase in salary? Have we agreed to that by ordinance? Have we?
For collective bargaining?
Yes, for just
3 units
general?
you have. For 3 units you have, and the other 2 have already been factored in because that was our
So
negotiation.
help me answer my question because I can't disciple a lot of that. You're giving employees across the board
2.5
Did we agree to that prior to putting the budget together?
for
Council, did
for
council agree
collective
to?
bargaining. You did.
No, I didn't ask you that. I asked you, did council agree that in general for all employees, we're going to give them a 3.2 increase in salary?
If
Did
you're
council take action on that?
no,
project?
because this
No.
is the mayor's budget. The mayor gets to propose the salary increase.
Understood, and I appreciate that. But if council makes a decision as to what we want to support as a policy, then that should be a policy that is driven to the administration, and it will help eliminate us questioning whether or not we've agreed to a certain salary increase, okay? I'm just suggesting that as policy. That's water over the dam for this budget. We've got your proposed budget, and unless we vote on it, council members, by the 15th of May, the mayor's budget walks totally just like it is. So, Madam President, I think we've got some internal work that we want to get done with council so that we look at this paper that we get a pile of before we start the meeting, that we revisit what is going to be presented to us with each session, affirm the dates, and be very descriptive of what is going to be presented each time we come in here so that I can focus on that section of the budget and be prepared with the questions that I have to ask. And we will feel that we are all working together to meet the 15th deadline and have time to do necessary, essential amendments and be prepared to have a balanced budget. Otherwise, we need to add a whole lot more meetings into what we already have. So thank you.
So
Thank you.
let me
Yes,
just say, I don't know
sorry.
what those papers are in front of you. They're not from us. I don't know if they were part of the AD questions.
They're the
that came.
responses to the
Got
questions.
it. Okay.
Okay. So, Ms. Joy Hogg, I'm going to be a little redundant here. You've heard the questions, and Mr. Slaps will collect those questions and get them to you. Members, and I've been chatting with Mrs. Slats, just based on the conversation even before council, I knew we would have to add some additional time to give time to review responses. And then in addition, certainly for FY 26-27 budget, to have the opportunity to really map out a process and path that would allow more time for the kind of review and deliberation, et cetera, will be necessary. And so members as well as staff will get with administration, take into consideration some of the concerns that have been shared, and we'll get in front of that. But this one, we still have work to do, and so we'll talk about additional time. Councilmember Abubakar, were you lit up over there? Okay.
Okay. I just had another question regarding active contracts with procurement. I know we have about $3 billion in active contract values. Is there a plan to reduce that amount? And I guess more importantly, is there a plan to train staff to ensure that those contracts are being managed effectively? Again, thinking about the streetlights audit, that was $1.2 million in financial discrepancies. So that's another. I'm just trying to be a problem solver. So I'm trying to find areas where, we can create efficiencies and hopefully get money to the right areas.
Contract management is a weak point of ours. Procurement is building up on contract management oversight and staffing. We went from not as many staff in procurement to now, but it's also not just the procurement department. It is the responsibility of each department who has that contract, that they need to be ensuring that invoices are paid according to what's in the scope of service and the unit price. Procurement has stepped up some of the training that they've been having with contract management, but there is certainly a lot more work to do in that area. We also have just kicked off the COSO review, which is Committee on Sponsoring Organizations. It's a review that looks at our decision-making process, our internal controls, who's in the approval lines, and how business flows through our system. And all the departments are involved in that type of review. So there's a lot more work to be done in that. And the other piece is part of the presentation was we talked about looking at contracts that we have and can we bring some of that in-house? Is it more cost efficient for us to do it in-house? And other services that we do in-house that need to go out. So we have to do those analyses.
Madam Clerk, can
FTE
you
headcount on, based on what is in procurement versus what is in each of the departments?
So the procurement staff is outlined in the budget book by staffing. Within the department, it could be various people, and that might not be their priority function or what they were hired for, but now they have this responsibility. And when you are not trained in that and you get this responsibility, you got to get training. We have to make sure that training happens and that there is oversight with all of that. So it could be somebody who's hired for a certain function, but then now has this as well. Or that was what they were hired for, but they're doing 10 other things at the same time.
Okay.
So it is a weak point of ours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lynch, are you? I can't see. Okay.
Okay. So I just have three general questions and then three kind of more EHS portfolio questions. One, if I'm recalling correctly, and I could be wrong, two of our biggest budget drivers, as I understand it, are moving from the old retirement system to the pension plan. VRS is driving some new expenditures for us. Were we using pension bonds to pay for those, to offset those? Remind me again how we were funding that, and if that is a budget driver, how how we're going to account for that, because I didn't see it. It's not really in our budget, but I know that it's something that we're paying for.
So the retirement system, if I remember the number, the 64, 67% funded. We should really be above 80%
Right.
funded status. That means the projection is how many people are going to retire at a certain point, and do you have funds in there to cover for the rest of their life for the benefit payout? So that's what we call the funded ratio. 64, 67 is not that great. We should be above 80% for a healthy retirement system. When we did the transition to VRS, part of the agreement was to sell pension obligation bonds. And we did. We sold 120 million in pension obligation bonds last year that went directly to RRS. That got us above 80%. So the last valuation that was done for RRS, we came in at 80.9% funded status. Part of the whole transition was that VRS is a more expensive system. We knew that going in. But the RRS, we should be seeing a savings in RRS as time goes on. And what we said was we would take the savings and put it into account, put it in a reserve, so that we can use that money to fund RRS should they ever go below 80%. VRS, when we did the transition, we expected a lower rate in 2026. It actually came in higher, because remember, since we made the decision to transition, we've had 2 years of flux in all of these numbers. So they actually came in higher than we projected. That is because they don't have the experience to measure us on and how many people are going to transition and the retirement age.
Yep.
We do expect one more year. Now we are full-fledged. Transition year is over as of January. We are full-fledged VRS, even though we were back last January 2024. But we finished our transition year. Once we have another year of experience within VRS, they will reevaluate the rate. And then we do expect that rate that they give us to come down. At that point, we can take that savings and put it into that reserve account. RRS, if we had done nothing, even if we didn't move to VRS, RRS costs would have continued to go up. So we would not have had a savings with RRS either.
So we may see a savings in the out years.
We'll see
they
a little bit of a
reevaluate the
savings because the VRS rate will come down, but then we have to keep our eye on RRS to keep them above 80%. And when we did the transition, we also said, give us the authority for another $30 million in pension obligation bonds to move to RRS should we need to. We have not issued that 30. I hope to never issue it, but it is there as a fail-safe. We're hoping that that plan of capturing the savings of that whole transition will go into that reserve amount, which it did not in 26 because the VRS rate came in higher than we expected.
And do we have a mechanism? Pension bonds have, obviously this has been a hot topic around the country. They've sunk, other localities have sunk their budgets on these transitions. Do we have a regular reporting mechanism beyond what you present in our kind of basic P&L that, we get quarterly? Do we have something that's kind of actively tracking the RRS, the risk that we're exposed to with the RRS decreasing?
So RRS has, they have investment reports that they have. I don't know if they put them online, but that board meets every quarter and they do track the investments and the returns. The valuation is done once a year and usually comes to the city about September.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm happy to give you the last valuation report.
Okay. The second question is in regards to the 3.7%. Obviously, you had the 3.7% in salary increase across the board.
3.25.
3.25. Well, I just gave everybody even more of a raise. I'm a popular person on council today. So the 3.25, obviously you had some methodology for how you determine that. Can you share with us how you arrived at 3.25?
3.25 is the agreed upon collective bargaining agreements. So to treat everybody equally, it's 3.25 for all general employees. That's what was agreed upon in the 3 collective bargaining agreements that you approved, and also the 2 new ones that are going to come before you in the next few weeks.
Okay. The other kind of, big expenditure driver, overtime, and that something is with that is very much within our locus of control. What are we doing to really control for the overtime expenditures in our departmental budgets?
So the biggest drivers are fire and police. And police overtime is police overtime, right? Because they have to staff up. And plus, when there are events and they're out there, we've got to pay them overtime. Fire has, and it's a very complicated issue, but they have a mandatory overtime built into their schedule. So part of what we agreed to with fire and collective bargaining was that we were going to look at their shift schedule and figure out how to switch that from mandatory overtime to just a shift schedule. I don't know where we'll end up with that, but we are starting that work. And until we change that shift schedule, they're always going to have that mandatory overtime built in.
So even with the new 72, well, they're not new, but even with us keeping the SAFER grant, putting that into general fund revenue, there's no offset from.
There should be a little bit of offset in there. So it should go down. I don't know how much, but we do expect fire overtime to go down because now you have more people. But remember, their schedule alone mandates overtime because they're on a 24-hour shift schedule.
Okay. If we can get exact numbers or projections of what that savings might be, I think that would be helpful.
Chief Siegel, can you do that?
Okay. These are, I'm going to go into my EHS related questions. So with the homeless services, obviously, we've been having robust discussion on our inclement weather shelter for a number of years. And yes, we did fund, it says 206 beds, but strictly for our inclement weather shelter from the months of November to April, we only have 100 beds.
106.
106. The administration spent somewhere between $600,000 and $650,000 this year in unaccounted for costs to provide for the overflow shelter and some emergency hoteling for children and families. One of the outcomes of our meeting 2 weeks ago, where we brought together a diverse group of stakeholders, was that we really wanted a plan and a budget that would be delivered in June. I'm not a weather person, a weatherman, but a meteorologist, but I think we're having winter again this year, and it comes the same time every year, and we always run into a predicament where we have unbudgeted costs for this, for the inclement weather shelter. We're funding the GRCOC beds. They're, year-round beds, but those are not, when we list those in our budget, those are not explicitly for Richmond City residents. Those year-round beds go into the regional system, as you know. Great investment, but that's really not, it's not, a genuine statement to say that we're providing inclement weather shelter or shelter for the city of Richmond through those means, right? We're supporting the larger regional network. The question is, can we, in your budget, really have some discussion and some pre-planning? Can you work with us on getting a better number to plan for the upcoming winter inclement weather sheltering? And likewise, I didn't see a budget for our because we do have on the books at when it hits summer above 92 degrees, we have similar situation. Again, unbudgeted, not accounted for costs in our budget, but very important for our obviously our in-house residents. The second EHS related question is on the non-departmental. We are asking, some of these cuts, I mean, every single one of us probably has an opinion about which organizations hold value, merit, who should get what cuts were appropriate, et cetera. What I think is missing from the conversation, and some of my colleagues alluded to this earlier, is the evaluation for our own programming. Office Community Wealth Building does produce a report that has the number of people that they have served per year. I think it would be great to have some of those metrics in more detail for this current year. We received a report last year, but have not received anything for this year. And that really helps us get a better understanding of, if we shift away from like workforce development, for example, can we reallocate that to some of our non-departmental organizations that may have gotten defunded or underfunded this year? I'm not saying we do that. I'm just saying it would be helpful to have some of those metrics so I can work with you, Councilmember Newball, on those.
So you want the metrics from OCWB for their services?
Yeah, like how
Like
many
their annual
served-
report?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the annual report. Because we usually get that every year, but you have it. Ms. Capricia has it, I know.
Yes,
We can do, okay.
just making sure that we can give it to you.
Okay. Okay, beautiful. And then the third EHS related question is just in regards to the family crisis funding. And what we're doing just across the board to really be targeted in how we provide equitable redistribution of our tax dollars to our very most vulnerable community members. And that program is really the only mechanism that we can directly impact. And as you know, I'm the person that pushed that program and very, very, very passionate about the Family Crisis Fund as a tool that we never had in our toolkit to really bolster and support the very most vulnerable families in our community. And obviously we slashed the funding by $500,000, but we know that the need is so much greater than that. What I would love to see is a report back on the family crisis funding of all the families that have called in over the last, let's just say year to date, so January till now, and the amounts of money that have been requested, and then the number of residents that have called in. And that'll give us a very good idea of the need. And if our budget comes anywhere close to the need, right? Because if so, then maybe we need to reallocate some funds. And likewise, for when we talk about affordable housing, performance grant agreements, affordable housing trust fund, all of that is, noble at helping us expand our housing inventory. But when we're talking about the folks that fall within our EHS portfolio, the very most vulnerable families, how many units, again, can we say that we have either developed, created, funded, what have you, at 40% of the AMI and below? And so getting that will give us that data point will give us a nice rounded number to complement family crisis funding, the homelessness services, all those kind of EHS related items. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll capture those similarly, make sure that you get those. Councilmember Trammell?
Madam President, I just want to say that I agree with my colleague. You get in here and you see all these papers and you wonder, I don't even know where it all came from, who put it here, was it our staff, was it you, it's like, then all of this, was this already emailed or sent out last night? So I think one of my colleagues said,
It was sent last night.
okay, because I've looked
I
on
think-
my city phone and I don't see it. But anyway, I'll get Rick to look upstairs to see if it was sent to me, because I do not see any of
Okay.
this. And I don't appreciate that. Not at all. But anyway, Sabrina, thank you for your presentation. I know you've been meeting with all council members because the president of council asked you to meet with us like Lincoln did last year. I had asked money for the John Marshall Court building. We could please look into that because of the security, because of the mold and all the other things that I'm hearing from even the citizens that go in there. I carried my daughter in there the other day, and just some of the things I seen as I walked in, I was not happy with the condition of that. Also, I've asked for at least one clerk for Ed Jewett to have that for a staff. I mean, we have all of these. I'm not going to even go there right this minute because I'm kind of upset with what I'm getting texts from citizens that are listening, and they're hearing that our utilities are going up. They want to know why. I know we need some new Bobby Vincent and Public Works needs some more trash trucks because in my district, I don't know about other districts, but I get calls every Thursday afternoon, Friday morning where the trucks are leaking all that nasty juice coming out the back of them. And I know that, we haven't had the trucks and now we're trying to get new ones. Also, I would like definitely to, look in the thing for the city clerk, the clerk's office over there at the John Marshall Court Building for Ed Jewett. Also for the retirees. They're texting me, there's nothing in there for the retirees again. And then as my colleagues, they have fought over looking through this budget, line after line. I've been looking a lot at the public safety, a lot at because I'm getting a lot of emails, a lot of calls from the teachers that are asking for more money for the schools. Every year we fund them, every year we give them everything that they ask for. And looks like right now, I know what my colleagues said, we're always in a crisis, even us council members, we have crisis in our lives right now that I know some of us are going through different things. So I would like, to have maybe another update, maybe another, like we can do one-on-one, or you can just bring it in here and give it to us. And maybe once I can look at this right here, find out who sent it, what it is, what it's all about, I can ask you some questions about that. I know I gave you a lot. Go ahead, Sabrina. I gave you a lot.
So I believe those papers in front of you are from the Council Chief of Staff's office. There were about 80 questions that were given to us last Wednesday, and with attachments. So that's what that is. Let me address the courthouse. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it takes a while to answer 80 questions. And there's a few that we're still waiting for responses back from departments to give you. But the John Marshall Courthouse, I think we talked about in public safety. So we are working with the judges over there. We have re-engaged the architects who did the preliminary design and to also bring the court folks back together at the table to figure out how we can redesign it. Because 300 million, 350, whatever it is hard for us to afford it within our capital constraints. So we've got to talk about how do we either renovate the current building, or is it a new location that we want? So we need to get them back around the table to start talking. Again, the firm that did the initial conceptual design has been re-engaged. They've already started working. DGS works very closely with the judges over there. Anytime there's an issue, they're over there. Security-wise, they're helping out. But, it's maintenance dollars that we use right now within our facilities budget. There's only so much to go around. And even one night there was the public toilet backed up. Don't know why. Probably somebody put something in there, who knows. But facilities and DGS are on site almost immediately. So right now we are in let's keep things running as they are, because that's our only choice until we can move ahead with either a new courthouse or a renovated structure. So we did move up the CIP funding in the 5-year plan to 2027 we just moved it up. We're going to need a lot more than what's shown in the budget, but we don't have that figure yet. So that's going to take some time for us to come back to you all to say, this is what the design is, and this is now the real cost.
But the problem is, we've been talking about this for a few years now. That's just like with the water crisis. Knew way back in 2012, or maybe, probably, I know 2012 I've heard, but anyway, and nothing got happened. And then look what happened with the crisis on January the 6th, 2025.
Yeah.
That this mayor, this was not under his control. It's the previous. We know about the courthouse. We know about the security, all of that. And that's years before. Now here we are. What's it going to take? A crisis or something, really horrible to happen over there that we can sit there and say, well, we didn't have the money, or we didn't think that it was necessary at this time. It is necessary at this time.
And we fully agree. We fully agree. It's either renovate the one that we have or build a brand new courthouse. We're not disputing that. It's just, how do we get there from here? And I need a design, and I need costs. And then we have to figure out, how do we finance it?
But we don't need another study, because we already know
It's not a study. It's getting the judges around the table to say, what in this conceptual design do you still want? What does it look like?
Okay. And then I didn't get the year from you. I think you said we went from 204,000 citizens to 226,000 citizens in 20.
Yeah, the census. census data.
What year, Sabrina?
2010 to 2020, I believe it was. Find the page. I can get that to you. It's in here. It's a lot of pages.
I know.
2004, I'm sorry, 204,214 from, that was in 2010, to 226,610, and that was in 2020 census.
2020,
Mm-hmm.
and now this is 2025, and I know all over the city. Yesterday, I was out there taking pictures, 7 different developments coming in just our 8th district. That's not counting citywide. And all the money, all the taxes, all the revenue coming in, you know, people are saying to me, it looks like the money is not being managed correctly. It's not being managed well. And I have to agree with my colleague. When you got citizens or you got employees making, 200,000, 300,000, should they be getting at this time the 3% when we need more people, more boots on the ground to get more, to show them that we care about them, especially in public works, public utilities, 911, police officers, firefighters, all that are not making, some of them are making less than what some of our part-time people are getting. And to me, I have a problem with that. I mean, they're boots on the ground working their butts off for us, for the city. And this is the way, and they're asking me, this is how we get treated. But I would definitely like to look at some of this other stuff, especially this right here. This is very alarming. But again, thank you. And I definitely agree with many of my colleagues that have brought up things today that, some of us feel like we've been left out, and not by you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Tramble, and Mr. Slatt will get with you to make sure we get those exact questions and get submitted to the administration. Vice President Jordan.
Thank you. Yes. And I'll kind of keep mine brief and follow up with some of my more specific questions. But I just wanted to circle back to something I think that was brought up. And in responding to some of the other questions, we didn't get a response to. But just for everyone's collective memory, we as a body changed our code for when the budget could be adopted to March 27th. And we did that in the winter of 23. And we did that because our land book value hadn't been closing, right? And so we were constantly trying to adopt a budget and then having to revisit it based on the final numbers. So I believe that's why we are behind and lag the counties. And we will again next year until we get on that renewed cycle. So it's going to be painful for these next few years. But I would love to talk about the process in general in GovOps. I think that's probably the appropriate place for us to dig into this for that most optimal calendar and collaboration. And then I wanted just to ask about, you've referenced a couple of times, obviously next year when we're on the freeze to try and get on a better cycle, so we have more advanced planning time, that we're going to need to hold back some funds. So I'm just nervous about where those funds are going to come from. And is that something maybe we need to be thinking about in this budget, particularly if we aren't even sure the ultimate implications of the federal government's actions? Do we need to be a little bit more conservative this year? Thank you.
So let me take the federal government first. Yeah. I don't know where they're going to go. And I think you and I spoke, this is already a conservative budget. Like I said, sometimes we get notice that the funds are being removed, then they're back the next day. So it's a seesaw at some point. And I'd hate to cut more services and become more conservative. Again, it's the will of the council. If you want to do that, you can. But we just don't know where the federal government's going right now. And we can come back during the course of the fiscal year if we know that we're going to lose a certain funding, come back and do those budget reductions and realign the budget mid-year. We can always do that. As far as 27 goes, fiscal year 2027 goes, we do need to start putting away some money because it's going to be hard to get there from here. We did start with the employee compensation reserve a couple of years ago, so we've been, at the end of the year, we've been putting some money into that from finance and also the HR, whatever's left over, we've been putting towards that. So there is 6 million in there to start us off for 27. That was the employee compensation reserve was also established when we did our employee engagement sessions 2 years ago. The employees wanted a commitment that when the economy turns south and we're constrained, that their raises are not in jeopardy. So we did commit that we would start moving some money to a reserve fund to get us through those times. And then we went and did this assessment cycle change. So a lot of that is going to be depleted when we go into 27. And so, but we need to keep that habit in place. There are other things that we're looking at in terms of when we receive revenues. Can we bring in revenue from the next fiscal year into the current one? Because we're on an accrual method, there are some things that we can maybe do there. I've got a team starting to look at the 27 and how we can, figure out how do we capture revenues accordingly. And then I would say if there's any sort of surplus, please put it aside. So that last November, any surplus, any additional revenue that comes in, please put it aside for 2027.
Thank you. Councilmember Breton?
There we go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I also say something? Ms. Jordan, there's also, we have reserves, right? Now, we shouldn't touch the reserves because that's what the rating agencies look at, and they measure us on all of that. However, if we need to tap into those reserves, we can, but we will need to provide them a plan of why and how we're going to replenish it. So, yes, it's going to be a tough year, and we need to do it responsibly, trying to get through 27. But those are some of the things that we're looking at. And when we give the rating agencies a plan of how we're going to rebuild that reserve, we got to stick to it.
Okay, got it. And thank you. I kind of maybe jumped the gun and should confer with our finance chair to make sure she doesn't want to take on this work. But anyway, I just wanted folks to know that we heard their concerns about the calendar. Thanks.
I was going to say something similar about wanting to know, not right this minute, but I think, over the next week or so, get the information to know all the ways that we are budgeting for the uncertainty of federal funding and the uncertainty of economic forces, right? So that might mean, our rainy day funds, what their capacity is to be withdrawn or added to, what we are doing and why. Similarly, the debt decisions that we're making, our debt capacity, current rates, and the decisions we're making about not tapping into that debt capacity or tapping into it for the reasons of federal uncertainty, economic uncertainty, so that we can really see what the options are and why we are or aren't taking them, and pat ourselves in the back for being responsible, right, and planning ahead. So I think that's gonna be really helpful for us to see. And I think I also want to reiterate something that Councilwoman Abubakar said about asking you all to find those redundancies. I think it's often said that, the mayor's budget comes and council spends a month arguing over 1%, right? I think, we all talk about collaboration. And I really think it would go a long way to help the collaborative process for you all to come to us with a recommendation for where we could find 1% of savings, right? That'll really help us have that conversation. And, I imagine if you had to find it, you would know better than me where to find it. So rather than keeping it in the back of your mind, share it with us so that we can have that as part of the conversation. I think that's going to help us all a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tramble?
Thank you, Madam President. Sabrina, I just got a text. Did you answer the question about the retirees, that they're going to get anything? Because it's not in the budget.
It is not in the budget, and it's going to be the will of the council if you want to budget for a bonus. And I would say it should be a one-time, because we had this discussion about how a COLA works. The RRS never had a COLA, was not programmed with the COLA, so we have not been paying into a COLA structure, unlike VRS, which has a program COLA. So the employees have not been paying into a COLA, unlike VRS. In the past few years, what we've done is done a one-time payment to them, and depending on what, and last year I believe we did $300 per retiree for that.
So we can look into that.
You can, but it will cost, it's, I think, about 500,000. And I'll get you that number. I'll give you the levels that you can do. I would strongly say not to do a COLA because in 2014 the accounting rules changed, and that which says that if a locality provides a COLA in a repeated pattern, they will automatically program that into the actuarial studies going forward. And each COLA is about, I think, $6.6 million. So that they will look for that pattern of a COLA.
So you get us that information?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just I want to go back, and I'll come right to you, Councilmember Gibson, but just Councilman Breton. The administration and council staff will be meeting this week because we'd asked that same question about Project 2025 and the implications for our city by department. And then what is our plan of action? So there is going to be a follow-up meeting this week that allows us to get to that kind of information as opposed to waiting. Both of us agree, both administration and council, for the next aha moment when we can look down the path and see the, impact that's occurring across the country. So, Councilmember Gibson and yes, I'm trying to make sure I see these red lights. I can't. Yes, Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you. And thank you, colleagues, for support in discussing how we enhance this process moving forward. I wanted to tie into the question about the uncertainty that we're in as a country and certainly as a city. It's important because, there was the recent presentation and lots of news coverage about the $116 million of potential loss, that we might lose from the federal government. And so, but I think that it would be really helpful to get more clarity. In my review of the budget document, there is in this year's budget $26.7 million in federal revenue that goes to social services. So, so the 116 million, I believe that's spread over several years. I would presume that maybe some of that is CIP. So it would be very helpful to get a clear understanding of the $26.7 million in federal government that's allocated in our general fund for this year. What is the specific risk of losing that amount of money? Because I think that's, like we're taking this one day at a time. And so, I think as we're talking about being fiscally conservative, it's important to understand, in the here and the now for this discussion, what is the risk for that amount of money and the potential impact. And so I appreciate the note about the rainy day fund, that it exists. And I would like to make a request that this body, perhaps at an upcoming organizational development meeting, receive a presentation on the current status of our rainy day fund, how much.
It's in the questions.
Okay. And how that can be used moving forward.
Yeah, and that would not be my first place to go to touch that because we got a lot of explaining to do on Wall Street when we touch that. It is, I put it on the table because if we need to use it, we can, but we got to have a plan to replenish. And with the fiscal uncertainty that's going on with the national level, I don't know if 2 or 3 years down the line, we will have those resources again to replenish it. So a lot of our federal funding is also transportation related, CIP, that's the huge hit. And then you have federal funding that runs through the state to us. So again, it's just, I don't know where to go with all of this because we get mixed messages about funding being there, then not, then back again. And it's very difficult to plan right now for that. Shunda, you want to talk about it? She's going to tell you about the DSS federal funding.
Thank you.
Afternoon, Shonda Giles, Director of Social Services. Forgive me, I'm a seasonal allergy person. So I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing in the 26.7 million, but that really is reflective of the 84.5% that we received back for staff operations. Some of our programs are 100% federally funded. I think the other consideration that needs to be had is how much the recipient of federal services spend in our community, which in 2023 was about $1.6 billion. So when you're looking at fiscal impact, that's largely Medicaid spending. So outside of just what we receive as a government, there's another impact. And I'm happy to provide any additional details.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, members, and Ms. Joy Hogg, I think, well, no, I know you will be receiving a list of questions that members have shared, and so that you can have those tomorrow. Okay. I'm going to turn Mr. Slatz just quick update in terms of next steps. In
Can I sit
addition
down?
to,
Am I done?
don't leave though.
Oh, no.
Thank you all. Based on conversations today, we will be following up with you all about possible added sessions. So look for that communications. I know we have several council members that are working day jobs, and we need to be thoughtful about how we find time. But just note that we'll be following up on that. Right now, we are scheduled for another work session next Monday at this exact same time from 1 to 3 that will be going over the CIP budget as is in the budget from the budget book from the mayor. But as always, we're here to connect and share and be in conversation with administration to facilitate questions and get your answers and priorities.
Thank you. Ms. Joy Hogg and Mr. Slatz and staff, certainly council members, just from the discussion today with the volume of questions that have come forward today and some others that are still remaining, I think we're going to have at least another work session to get through those and get, the answers that folks are looking for. So members, be on the lookout for the additional work session. Mr. Slatz will follow up with us and with the administration on that. And then we will look at, again, Councilmember Robertson, I had not had an opportunity to reach out to you, but I'm going to be reaching out to you and Councilmember Jordan to begin that conversation within a reasonable time frame of putting this budget to bed about the FY 26-27 time frame for next year's budget. Okay, just based on the feedback, comments that we've received, that's going to be critical. And then working in conjunction with the administration so that it is truly collaborative. Ms. Joy Hogg, I want to say thank you to you and your staff. This has been an enormous undertaking, and just the questions and responses back to us. I mean, they've been substantive and more to come. So incredible job, more work to come, and look forward to the next steps so that we can have a budget we all agree on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, with that, this work session stands adjourned. More to come, the little break before OD meeting, and see you back here at 4.